As I tended her wounds, the alien princess's healer whispered, "Your hands are far too gentle." Beginning. The battlefield still smelled of ion fire and scorched earth when I found her. The alien princess lay half buried beneath shattered stone and twisted metal, her ceremonial armor cracked, glowing faintly as if even in ruin it still resisted defeat. Her people, the Loria, had fought for survival against a ruthless empire that wanted to strip their world bare. I had no business being there. I was just a human medic, one of the 100 hired as neutral auxiliaries to patch up whichever side paid better. But when I saw her pale silver hair tangled with blood in her eyes, those unearthly star-glow eyes fluttering between life and death, I couldn't walk past. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the shriek of plasma overhead, and began cutting away the ruined plates of her chest armor. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the strange reverence I felt. I had never touched anything so fragile, so alien, so heartbreakingly alive. Her breath was shallow. She whispered something in her tongue, too weak to raise her hand. I pressed gauze to her wound, sealing it with Medi-Gel from my kit. That's when another figure appeared, cloaked in silver robes, moving with a grace that no human could imitate. The healer, her personal physician. His skin shimmered faintly like hers, his long fingers carrying instruments older than my civilization. He watched me work, and when I pressed my palms over the deep gash at her ribs, applying steady pressure, he bent close and whispered in my ear, "Your hands are far too gentle for soldiers." I froze. His voice was neither hostile nor suspicious, merely surprised, as though he had seen something he did not expect in me. I swallowed, forcing words past a lump in my throat. "I'm no soldier. I'm just trying to keep her alive." And so began the night that would change everything. Middle. The healer let me stay. Perhaps he was too occupied with her deeper injuries, or perhaps he saw something in me. Together we worked, him with his crystal instruments and whispered chants, me with bandages, clamps, and Medi-Gel. Between us, we stabilized the princess. Her name, I learned, was Celera Valith, heir to the Lorian crown. She had led her people into battle, refusing to remain hidden in their ivory towers, while soldiers bled for her. And for that, she had nearly died. We moved her to a hidden refuge, a cavern carved deep into the cliffs, where the last survivors of her guard regrouped. I was the only human allowed inside, and even that was met with hard stares and half-drawn blades. Days turned into weeks. I tended her wounds daily, changing bandages, massaging stiffened muscles, helping her stand again. Sometimes she would wake in fever, whispering fragments of songs in her tongue, and I would unback softly, not knowing the words but letting the melody bind us in fragile trust. The healer, whose name was Tyrannel, watched me closely. One night, as Celera slept under the soft glow of bioluminescent moss, he spoke again. "You handle her as though she were made of glass. Yet glass cuts when it breaks. Do you not fear her?" I looked at her, her chest rising and falling in fragile rhythm. "She's flesh and blood, like anyone else. Why would I fear her?" Tyrannel's eyes shimmered with something I couldn't read, because she is not anyone else. She carries within her the living memory of our world. Her blood is a covenant. To wound her is to wound all Eloria. I had no answer for that. All I knew was the truth. Every time my hands brushed against hers, I felt a current, as though her veins carried not blood but starlight. And yet, she never looked at me as lesser. Not once. Then came the night she awoke fully lucid. I was changing her bandages when her hand caught my wrist, stronger than I expected. Her voice was soft, melodic, carrying the faintest echo as if the cabin itself listened. "You are not of us, and yet you stay." I swallowed hard. "You'd be dead if I hadn't." Her lips curved in the ghost of a smile. "Then I owe you more than my life. Tell me your name." "Elias," I said. She repeated it, tasting the sound, and for the first time, I saw in her eyes not a patient, not a princess, but a woman who carried a weight heavier than I could imagine. But peace was not to last. The enemy discovered our refuge. We woke to alarms, the cavern walls trembling under bombardment. Celera was still too weak to fight, but she refused to be carried away like a child. Tyrannel and I half-dragged, half-guided her as her guard clashed with the invaders. Plasma lit the tunnels, screams echoing in the dark. At the mouth of the cavern, I saw the impossible. Enemy mechs descending in scores, metal giants armed with cannons that could shatter cities. We would never make it out alive. Unless I remember the supply crates left in the lower tunnels. Among them, experimental charges Elorians had scavenged. If detonated, they could bring the entire cliffside down, burying both us and enemy. I told Tyrannel. His eyes widened. "You would die." I met Solara's gaze. She was pale, trembling, her strength nearly gone. Yet even then she straightened, her voice like steel. "No, he will not. Before I could protest, she placed her hand over mine. There's another way. She explained breathlessly. The Elorian's ancestral weapon, buried deep beneath cliffs. A living construct, bound by their forebears. With the right blood, her blood, it could be awakened to defend its people. But she was too weak to make the descent alone. And so it was me, Elias, a human medic, no soldier, no hero, who carried her down into the heart of the mountain, following Tyrannel's guidance. Climax. The chamber was vast, cathedral-like, carved by hands older than human history. At its center lay the construct, a colossus of crystal and living metal, dormant but thrumming faintly with suppressed power. Celera staggered to its base, pressing her palm against the core. Blood welled where she cut her skin, dripping into the grooves of the ancient seal. The construct stirred. Light rippled through its veins. But the enemy was already upon us. Soldiers poured into the chamber, weapons raised. I grabbed a fallen blaster, clumsy in my hands, firing wildly to keep them back. I was no marksman, but desperation made me dangerous. Celera cried out as the construct awoke fully, its eyes igniting like twin suns. The enemy faltered, some fleeing, some firing futilely against its towering frame. With a roar like the tearing of worlds, the construct swept its arm, obliterating half the chamber. Dust and screams filled the air. Through it all, I stayed at her side, shielding her as best I could, guiding her steps as the mountain itself shook. Tyrannel shouted incantations, bolstering the bond between princess and construct. At last, the enemy broke. Their mechs fell, their soldiers fled, and silence descended. Celera collapsed into my arms, utterly spent. Her blood stained my hands. But when her eyes opened, glowing faintly, she whispered, "You stayed." I held her tighter. Always. Ending. In the days that followed, the enemy retreated from Eloria, broken by the awakening of the construct. Celera was hailed as the savior of her people. Songs were sung. Fires were lit. Hope, long dead, returned. And me? I should have left. I was just a human, an outsider with no place among them. But when I tried, Celera herself stopped me. Her hand found mine, as it had on that battlefield, fragile yet unyielding. You came to me as a stranger. You touched me not as a princess, but as a woman who bled. For that, Elias, you are no longer outsider. Even Tyrannel, ever watchful, inclined his head in rare approval. Your hands may be gentle, human, but sometimes gentleness can change the course of worlds. I stayed, not as a mercenary, not even as a medic, but as the one who had seen the alien princess not as a symbol, but as a soul. And though the stars still burned with war beyond their skies, in that moment, in her gaze, I found something I had not thought possible. A home,